Eleanor Stark was born in 1989, growing up in a middle-class family in Hartford, Connecticut. Her father, Stark, was a high school history teacher, and her mother, Anna, worked as a nurse. The youngest of two children, she had an older brother, Jason, who was 3 years her senior. From an early age, Elena demonstrated intelligence and a drive to succeed. She excelled in school, particularly in English and debate, impressing teachers with her ability to analyze complex situations and articulate her thoughts clearly. This skill would later become instrumental in unraveling a mystery that would reshape her life, but her childhood was not without its challenges. When Eliana was 14, her parents went through a bitter divorce. The experience left a lasting mark, instilling a deep-seated fear of betrayal and a determination to build a stable, loving family of her own. She immersed herself in her studies, using academic success as a refuge from the turmoil at home. Her efforts paid off when she was accepted into Yale University on a partial scholarship. At Yale, Elena majored in communications with a minor in psychology, captivated by how people interact and communicate. During her sophomore year, she met Shawn Thompson at a campus mixer. Shawn, a senior in business administration, was immediately drawn to her wit and warmth. Their relationship quickly blossomed. Shawn's confidence and ambition complemented Elena's intelligence and empathy, and by the time she graduated, they were already discussing marriage. 2 years later, they married in a beautiful ceremony, attended by friends and family. After college, Elena's career in marketing took off. Her knack for understanding consumer behavior and creating compelling campaigns earned her rapid promotions. And by age 30, she'd reached the role of marketing executive at a prominent advertising firm in Hartford. Despite her career success, Elena never lost sight of her dream to start a family. She and Shawn had longed for children, but as the years passed, they struggled with infertility. The experience was emotionally taxing, but seemed to strengthen their bond, or so Elena believed. In the early years of their marriage, Elena and Shawn appeared to live an idyllic life. They bought a charming 4-bedroom colonial home, which they hoped to fill with children one day. Weekends were spent on home renovations, exploring farmers markets, or hosting friends. Shawn's job as a management consultant often required frequent and sometimes lengthy business trips. Though the separations were initially hard on Eleanor, she adapted over time, filling her days with work, yoga classes, and volunteering at a local animal shelter. When Shawn was home, they cherished their time together, enjoying romantic getaways or quiet nights on the couch with a bottle of wine and a good movie. Their friends frequently remarked on how in love they seemed, even finishing each other's sentences and laughing at shared inside jokes. But as time went on, small, unsettling changes began to appear. Shawn's trips grew more frequent and prolonged, and when he was home, he seemed distant, often checking his phone or taking calls at odd hours. Elena attributed his behavior to work stress and tried to be supportive. The first real sign that something was amiss came on their 10th anniversary. Shawn, who had always gone out of his way to celebrate their anniversaries, forgot the date entirely. Away on a business trip, he didn't call until late in the evening, apologizing, but seeming distracted. Though it was a small oversight, it planted a seed of doubt in Elena's mind, a seed that would soon grow into a tangled web of suspicion and deceit. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in April. Elena had taken a half-day off to prepare for a dinner party they were hosting that weekend. While searching the guest room closet for a specific serving platter, she stumbled upon an unfamiliar shoebox. Curiosity piqued, she opened it and felt her blood run cold. Inside were items that didn't belong. A second cell phone, a stack of birthday and Father's Day cards labeled Daddy in a child's handwriting, and several photos of Shawn with a woman and 2 young children, hands trembling. Elena examined the photos. Shawn appeared happy and relaxed, his arms around a beautiful brunette woman and 2 children, a boy who looked around 7 and a girl of about 5. Judging by the photos' backgrounds, they weren't taken in a hotel room or on vacation, but appeared to be in a home. a second home she knew nothing about. Her mind raced, trying to rationalize what she was seeing. Was this an old relationship Shawn had never mentioned? But the children seemed too young for that. The latest Father's Day card was dated only last year. In a daze, Elena began piecing together the truth. She had long ignored. Shawn had a second family, driven by a need for answers. She powered on the second phone and found it was still active, containing hundreds of text messages between Shawn and a woman named Jennifer. The messages were filled with endearments and references to everyday family life, school plays, doctor's appointments, family vacations. Each text was like a dagger to Elena's heart. Using the details in the messages, Elena searched online for Jennifer Lawrence. Her social media profile was mostly private, but what little Eleanor could see confirmed her worst fears. There were photos from restaurants in Columbus, Ohio, dated to times when Shawn claimed to be away on business. Jennifer's vague posts about family, carefully worded to her her husband, suggested a deliberate secrecy. The reality sank in like a heavy weight, filling Elena with shock, betrayal, anger, and a profound sadness. Her entire life, her marriage, had been built on lies. Hours passed as she sifted through Shawn's credit card statements on earthing regular charges in Columbus. He had always explained these as business expenses. She even discovered a hidden bank account, regularly transferring funds to an account under Jennifer's name. As night fell, Elena sat in the darkened living room, surrounded by the evidence of her husband's deceit. The home she had poured her heart into now felt like a hollow facade, every happy memory tainted. Famous aid. Every happy memory tainted. She knew she had decisions to make. Confront Shawn, consult a lawyer, or reach out to Jennifer. Little did she know, this discovery was just the beginning. The choices she would make in the days ahead would set in motion a series of events that would lead to devastating consequences. As Elena dug deeper into Shawn's hidden life, she discovered that Jennifer Lawrence, 34, was a pediatric nurse at a hospital in Columbus. She had met Shawn 8 years ago while he was on an extended consulting project. Their whirlwind romance had resulted in Jennifer's pregnancy just months after meeting. Already married to Elena for 4 years by then, Shawn made the fateful decision to lead a double life. Rather than come clean to either woman, he told Jennifer that his job required him to split his time between Columbus and Hartford to maintain his facade. He even bought a modest home in a Columbus suburb under an LLC, providing a part-time residence for his second family. Jacob and Emily, Shawn's children with Jennifer, believed their father's story about his demanding job. Shawn had woven a complex web of lies, telling them he was a pilot to explain his long and frequent absences. To Jennifer and the kids, he was a devoted father, doing his best to balance family and a career that required him to be away. As Elena continued to unravel her husband's double life, she found herself obsessively comparing her world with Jennifer's. While Elena and Shawn lived in a sprawling, beautifully decorated home, Jennifer and the children resided in a cozy, modest house where Eleanor and Shawn attended glamorous corporate events. Jennifer's life appeared centered around children's birthday parties, little league games, and neighborhood barbecues. The contrast between Shawn's two lives was stark. With Eleanor, he was the ambitious executive in tailored suits, photographed at charity guillars and on luxury vacations. In his life with Jennifer, he was relaxed and casual, a man in jeans and t-shirts building sandcastles or pushing swings. This contrast attia Eleanor. Had she ever really known Shawn at all? She couldn't shake the unsettling thought that perhaps this other life, this other version of Shawn, was more genuine than the one she knew. The Shawn she knew would never have been content with the simple domestic existence he seemed to share with Jennifer, or had she been blind to his true nature all along? As she unearthed more details, Elena's emotions oscillated between rage, heartbreak, and a strange fascination. She wondered about Jennifer. Will she another victim of Shawn's deceit? Or did she know about Elena all along? And what about the children? Innocent lives unknowingly caught up in a web of lies. The more she learned, the more she realized that confronting Shawn wouldn't just impact her. It could shatter 2 young lives as well. The weight of this knowledge pressed on her, making her next decision feel impossibly heavy. After days of inner turmoil, Elena finally decided she couldn't keep living a lie. She needed answers, and she needed them from Shawn. She chose a Friday evening when he was due back from a business trip to confront him. All day, she felt sick with anxiety, rehearsing what she would say, trying to brace herself for his reaction. When Shawn walked through the door at 7 p.m., his welcoming smile faded as he saw her sitting rigidly on the living room couch. The shoebox and a pile of evidence lay out on the coffee table. His face paled, and in that instant he realized his carefully constructed world was on the brink of collapse. "Elena, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaking despite her attempts to stay calm. "I know about Jennifer and the kids. I know everything." For a moment, Shawn stood frozen, his face a mix of shock and dread. Then, as if a switch had flipped, he moved into damage control mode, approaching her with hands raised in a placating gesture. "Honey, I can explain it's not what you think, but Elena was beyond the location. Months of suspicion, now compounded by days of agonizing certainty, had left her raw and furious. She erupted, her voice rising as she hurled questions and accusations. How long had this been going on? How could he betray her like this? Did he ever love her? Or was their entire marriage just another lie? Shawn's responses were a chaotic mix of excuses and apologies. He never intended for it to happen. He claimed he felt trapped, loving both his families in different ways. He insisted he had planned to end things with Jennifer. But then the children were born. He was so sorry. He repeated over and over. But as the argument escalated, Elena saw a shift in Shawn's demeanor. His initial remorse faded, replaced by a cold, calculating look she'd never seen before. When she mentioned going to Jennifer with the truth, Shawn's expression darkened. His voice took on a menacing edge as he warned her to think carefully about her next move. For the first time, she glimpsed a side of him that frightened her. A man capable of living a life of years, deceiving everyone around him without remorse. The confrontation ended abruptly. Shawn, his face a storm of anger and panic, stormed out of the house. Moments later, Elena heard the screech of his car peeling out of the house. Moments later, Elena heard the screech of his car peeling out of the driveway. She was left alone in the echoing silence of their home, surrounded by the fragments of their shattered life. In the days following the confrontation, Elena felt numb, moving through the house in a fog, torn between fits of uncontrollable tears and eerie calm. She called in sick to work, barely eating or sleeping, replaying the confrontation over and over in her mind. Shawn didn't return. Initially, she assumed he had gone to Jennifer, either to warn her or to finally choose his second family. But as days passed with no word, no activity on his cell phone, and no charges on their joint credit cards, a new worry began to gnaw at her. Where was Shawn, and what was he planning? The man she had confronted was not the Shawn she had known. She had no idea what he was truly capable of. As the silence stretched on, her worry grew into fear. She hadn't told anyone about her discovery or the confrontation. Now, with Shawn missing and her world unraveling, she realized she couldn't bear this secret alone. 5 days after Shawn's disappearance, she broke her silence and reached out to Emma, Shawn's younger sister, with whom she felt closest. Over coffee and a quiet cafe, Elena poured out the entire story, from the discovery of the shoebox to Shawn's menacing response. Emma's face paled as she listened, her shock quickly morphing into alarm. Determined that Shawn's disappearance warranted serious concern, Emma urged Eleanor to go to the police. Though Eleanor hesitated, fearing the public exposure of her private nightmare, she reluctantly agreed. The police took the report seriously. Detective Stark Albert, a veteran known for his skill with complex cases, was assigned to investigate. He listened carefully as Eleona recounted the events leading up to Shawn's disappearance. The revelation of a hidden second family raised immediate red flags for Albert, who had seen more than his share of high-stakes marital deceptions. When contacted, Jennifer Lawrence was visibly shaken by the news, clearly unaware of Shawn's double life. She'd never suspected a second wife or family, as Elena, Jennifer, and Detective Albert pieced together the timeline. More secrets emerged. Initially, Jennifer was too stunned to speak to anyone about Shawn, but as the investigation dragged on, she reluctantly cooperated with police, describing a partner and father who had always seemed caring and trustworthy, a man who gave no sign he led a double life. Yet, as Detective Albert delved deeper, cracks began to appear in the image Shawn had so carefully crafted. Financial records revealed substantial sums being moved in ways that didn't align with Shawn's income, and co-workers noted that some of Shawn's business trips didn't line up with the company's records. Bit by bit, the polished facade of Shawn Thompson as a successful, upstanding businessman began to crumble under the weight of mounting evidence of deception and fraud. 2 weeks into the case, a crucial lead emerged. Shawn's car, left in a parking structure near Bradley International Airport, surveillance footage caught him arriving with a large duffel bag, but there was no video of him leaving. This new detail only thickened the mystery. Had Shawn gone into hiding, anticipating a public scandal, or had something more sinister happened? As the investigation intensified, Elena and Jennifer began to show signs of strain. Elena, once a fixture in her social circles, withdrew almost entirely, leaving the house only when necessary. Jennifer, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for her children, ultimately took leave from work, overwhelmed by the relentless pressure. What had started as Elena's shocking discovery was now an unyielding nightmare, with each passing day altering more lives. Weeks turned into months, but Detective Albert and his team kept digging, uncovering a darker, more complex picture of Shawn's life. Shawn, they found, had been living on a dangerous edge, balancing two families while orchestrating a high-stakes financial scheme. Interviews with Shawn's co-workers exposed a pattern of deception. A consultant named Simon Reeves recalled instances where Shawn claimed to attend meetings that Reeves knew hadn't actually happened. Reeves had admired Shawn's charm and his ability to win clients, but now he wondered if some of those clients were simply figments of Shawn's imagination. The financial evidence was even more damning. Forensic accountants uncovered an intricate Ponzi scheme Shawn had run for years, where he used new investors' money to pay off earlier ones, skimming large amounts for himself along the way. This scheme explained how he could support two families and maintain his extravagant lifestyle. As Shawn's deceitful actions came to light, former friends and colleagues found themselves under scrutiny. Elena, meanwhile, reeling from the collapse of her marriage, began to fear that her entire life with Shawn might have been financed through stolen money. Though she had been unaware of his illegal dealings, she worried that her home and way of life had been built on a foundation of fraud. Jennifer, too, faced her own version of this waking nightmare. Her world was unraveling as the man she thought she knew disappeared, leaving her to answer relentless questions from the police. She was forced to relive years of memories with Shawn, looking for clues she had missed. Hardest of all was explaining to their children, Jacob and Emily, why their father wasn't coming home and why people on TV were speaking so poorly of him. Over time, a clearer picture of Shawn's final movements emerged. Security footage from the parking garage showed him entering with a duffel bag on the night of his disappearance, but no video captured him leaving. Investigators, now thoroughly combing the garage, uncovered Shawn's duffel bag hidden in a rarely used stairwell. Inside were his phone, wallet, and a note, the contents of which sent shockwaves through everyone involved. In the note, Shawn confessed to his fraudulent activities, apologizing for the pain he had caused both families and describing the relentless anxiety of living a double life. He ended on a chilling note. "By the time you read this, I'll be gone. It's better this way. I'm sorry." The discovery of the note shifted the investigation's direction. Was this a farewell letter? A sign that he might have taken his life? Or was it a ploy to mislead detectives while he escaped to a new life yet again? Detective Albert, holding the letter, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Shawn Thompson had woven a lifetime of deception, and the truth, like Shawn himself, remained elusive, likely to reveal itself in darker ways than anyone anticipated. The case entered a disturbing new phase as the consequences of Shawn's actions rippled out, disrupting lives, ruining reputations, and bringing ruin to those connected. Yet the full scope of the damage was still hidden, and the toll was about to grow. 3 months after Shawn's disappearance, the investigation took a grim twist. Simon Reeves, Shawn's co-worker, who had shared information with the police about discrepancies in Shawn's work, was found dead in his home. At first, it appeared to be a tragic accident. Reeves seemed to have fallen down the stairs after a night of drinking, but certain details didn't sit right with Detective Albert, now heading a dedicated task force on the Thompson case. The position of Reeves's body didn't align with an accidental fall, and friends confirmed that while he drank socially, he rarely overindulged. A closer forensic examination found traces of a strong sedative in his system, one he hadn't been prescribed. As they investigated further, an unsettling theory emerged. Could someone have silenced Reeves to prevent him from revealing more about Shawn's schemes? The timing was more than suspicious. Reeves had been scheduled to give a detailed statement to the police the very next day. His death sent shockwaves through everyone involved in the case. Those who had known Shawn and had been questioned by police, or were due to be, began looking over their shoulders. What had begun as a story of deception was now turning deadly. Elena, already struggling with intense anxiety after Shawn vanished, became nearly paralyzed with fear. She hadn't known Reeves well, but the idea that anyone connected to Shawn's case might be targeted terrified her. She installed a security system at home and only left when absolutely necessary. Jennifer, meanwhile, faced her own fears in Columbus, with her children's safety at stake. She even considered moving somewhere far from Shawn's shadow, but the ongoing investigation kept her rooted in place. The police dug deeper into Reeves's death, uncovering a hidden twist. It turned out Reeves had started his own investigation into Shawn's activities. His home office had been searched before the police arrived, but a concealed safe had been overlooked. Inside, detectives found documents suggesting that Shawn's schemes went even deeper, possibly involving offshore accounts and even links to organized crime. Reeves's death marked a critical turning point. What had once seemed like a case of infidelity and fraud had now crossed into a darker territory, a potential murder investigation. In the wake of this revelation, a palpable fear gripped everyone connected to Shawn Thompson. The police increased patrols near Jennifer and her children, but the threats kept coming. Eliana received anonymous, ominous phone calls in the dead of night, filled only with silence and heavy breathing. Jennifer found her car vandalized, the word liar scraped into the paint. Even Shawn's former boss received a disturbing package, a dead rat wrapped in newspaper. The investigation into Reeves's death continued to raise more questions. Surveillance footage showed a nondescript van parked near his house that night, its license plate obscured. Neighbors reported seeing a stranger asking questions about Reeves days before he died, but descriptions of the man were inconsistent and vague. The pressure was taking a toll on everyone involved. Shawn's sister Emma had a public breakdown, shouting at a store cashier she thought was staring at her. Jennifer's son Jacob, too, had begun acting out, suspended from school after fighting with a classmate who taunted him about his missing father. Detective Albert and his team worked tirelessly, following every lead, convinced that the key to unraveling the truth lay somewhere in Shawn's scattered financial records. But each breakthrough seemed to lead to another dead end, and tension built as the stakes climbed ever higher. Then came another shocking event that tipped the investigation into chaos. Just 6 weeks after Reeves's death, the case took an even darker tone with a second murder. This one much closer to home. Emma Thompson, Shawn's younger sister, who had encouraged Elena to bring her suspicions to the police, was found dead in her apartment. Unlike Reeves's death, there was no attempt to disguise her death as an accident. Emma had been strangled, marking the start of a sinister pattern that no one could have foreseen, Her apartment had been ransacked, and the scene was one of brutal chaos, shocking even the most seasoned detectives. Whoever had been there had clearly been searching for something, but whether they had found it was uncertain. The news hit Elena like a physical blow. Emma had been her closest confidant through all of this, the one person who truly seemed to understand the turmoil Elena was living through. And now she, too, was gone. Another victim of the web Shawn had spun. Jennifer, realizing how close the danger was, made the hard choice to move her children to her parents' house in rural Ohio. She couldn't ignore the peril any longer, and her instincts told her she had to protect her family at any cost. As the investigation into Emma's murder progressed, a disturbing theory took shape. Emma had apparently been building her own file on Shawn, motivated by both anger and disbelief. Had her discoveries made her a target, investigators found Emma's laptop missing, and her cloud storage had been wiped just hours before her estimated time of death. Whatever Emma had uncovered, someone had gone to great lengths to erase it. The double tragedy of Reeves and Emma's deaths reverberated through law enforcement. The FBI became officially involved with Special Agent Carla Mendez, a seasoned investigator of high-profile financial crimes, assigned to collaborate with Detective Albert. As Mendez delved into the case, she began to see a larger pattern. The fraud, the deaths disguised as accidents, the professional hits, it all pointed to a network of organized crime. Had Shawn entangled himself with dangerous individuals, or had he always been more deeply involved than anyone suspected? With 2 murders now linked to the investigation, the urgency to find Shawn, dead or alive, escalated. But the man who had led a double life so seamlessly had now become just as elusive in his absence. Then a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A hiker, trekking through a remote state park some 50 miles from Millbrook, stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. Inside, he found traces of recent occupancy and walls papered with newspaper clippings. Startled, he called the authorities. When Detective Albert and Agent Mendez arrived at the scene, they sensed this was significant. Hidden under a loose floorboard, they found a laptop, later confirmed to belong to Emma. For the first time in weeks, they had a concrete lead. As forensic teams combed the area, Elena received a call that chilled her to the bone. It was Shawn. His voice was barely recognizable, hoarse and desperate. He told her he needed to see her, that he wanted to explain everything, against her better judgment and fueled by a desperate need for closure. Elena agreed to meet him. The meeting spot was an abandoned factory on the town's edge. Elena, her heart racing, walked into the dilapidated building. She had informed Detective Albert about the meeting, knowing the police were in position, but she still felt exposed and afraid. Shawn appeared from the shadows, a ghostly figure of the man she had once known, gaunt with hollow eyes. His once flawless appearance was now ragged and worn. They stood in silence. The weight of everything that had happened heavy in the air until Shawn finally broke down. Words poured out of him, his voice unsteady. He confessed to being involved with a criminal network, using his consulting job as a cover for laundering money. It had started as a way to make extra cash, but soon he was trapped. He choked up as he talked about Jennifer and the children, explaining how he genuinely loved them and tried to keep them isolated from his illicit activities, hoping they could have the normal life he'd failed to provide for Eleanor. Elena felt a torrent of emotions, anger, pity, disgust, and the faint echo of love she had once felt for him. But most of all, she felt an overwhelming sadness for all the lives his choices had shattered. Suddenly, Shawn's tone shifted, and a wild look filled his eyes as he mentioned Emma and Reeves. He was certain that they were after him, and that nowhere was safe. Alarmed by his erratic behavior, Elena tried to calm him, urging him to surrender. In that instant, the sound of sirens blared outside, and Shawn panicked, pulling out a gun that Elena hadn't realized he was carrying. She raised her hands, trying to talk him down, but he was beyond reason, waving the gun frantically and yelling that he couldn't face prison. What happened next unfolded in seconds, but the memory would haunt Elena for years. The police stormed in, shouting for Shawn to drop his weapon. He looked at Eleanor, his face filled with anguish, and then turned the gun on himself. A shot rang out, echoing through the empty factory. In the chaos that followed, as officers and paramedics swarmed the scene, Elena stood frozen. Witnessing the tragic end of Shawn Thompson's story in the weeks that followed, the true scope of Shawn's crimes was revealed. The laptop found in the cabin exposed a tangled web of fraud, money laundering, and connections to organized crime that had been years in the making. Shawn survived his attempt to take his own life, but remained in a coma, never to face justice or the lives he had devastated. For many, it felt like the ultimate injustice. The criminal network he'd been entangled with was exposed, leading to several arrests. Investigators learned that Reeves and Emma had been targeted not by Shawn, but by those in his criminal circle who feared exposure. Elena, forever changed, decided to leave Millbrook and start anew. Jennifer and her children stayed in Ohio, working to rebuild their lives far from the painful shadow of Shawn's choices.